Good day, Grade 12 learners, and welcome to today's English First Additional Language lesson. My name is Liz Meyer, and this lesson is brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Cyboda Discovery Centre. I hope you're well, and welcome back. Today's topic is language. Yes, I know, might not get too excited about it, but I'm sure after this you would have learned quite a lot. So we have quite a lot of things we have to touch on this today. On your screen, you'll see a list of all the lesson objectives. We're going to look at possible language questions, that you have to know the rules when studying language, that you have to be able to identify the different parts of speech in a sentence. I'm going to show you how to change a sentence from the active to the passive voice. We'll focus on the rewriting of reported speech, changing a sentence into a negative or into a tag, understand how new words are formed, and we'll talk about antonyms, synonyms, homophones, and homonyms. And as you can see, there's quite a lot to learn. So I suggest you get a piece of paper and your pen ready. Let's do this. So what are the language skills that are usually assessed in your paper 1? Now, just to remind you quickly, with question 3, the advertisement, there will be 2 marks out of the 10 marks that will be based on language. On your question 4, your cartoon, there will be another 2 marks. And then obviously your question 5, which will be 20 marks, focusing solely on language. So that gives you 24 marks out of the 80 marks, all just for language. So if you can master your language rules, I'm sure you're going to do pretty well in paper 1. But I'm sure I'm speaking to the experts, aren't I? So let's see how well you know your rules. On your screen, you'll see a short baseline assessment. There are 5 sentences, and in each sentence there is a language error. I'm going to give you a few seconds to see if you can quickly find those 5 errors and rectify them. Remember, the same error will not be repeated. So your first one says, artificial intelligence is transforming industries across the globe. Number 2, the advancement in AI has opened many new opportunities. And 3, last year, developers are launching several new AI models. Number 4, the AI system made a conscious decision based on its training data. And number 5, many AIs now come equipped with natural language processing abilities. I'm sure while I was reading, you were focusing on all those questions. Did you find the errors? I'm sure you did. Let's go through them. Are you ready? Let's see. So the first one was a spelling error. Hopefully you picked up that intelligence should be spelled with 2 L's. So I always suggest when you get things like this, always start with the spelling. Check carefully every single word to make sure there isn't a spelling error. Let's try the second one. So in the second one, there was an error with the concord. Now I'm sure you remember what concord is. This is where your subject and your verb has to agree. Now if you look at our sentence, it says the advancement in AI has opened many new opportunities. Originally, it was have. It should be has. Are you right? No, you're right. Has should be have. Why? Because we have advancements, which is in plural. So we can't have a has there, we have to have a have for advancements. So that's the second thing you need to look out for. Does my subject and my verb agree? Let's try this third one. So the first one had to do with tenses. Last year, developers are launching several new AI models. Now the time word last year already an indication that we are in the past tense. So the verb are launching is definitely incorrect and should be launched. Yes, I know, I'm sure you picked up on that one. Let's try the fourth one. Now, in this case, we played with words that are often confused. We gave you a sentence and it says the AI system made a conscious decision based on its training data. Conscience doesn't fit there. It should be conscious. And can you look at the spelling? Oh, this is really important. When you rewrite the error, your spelling must be absolutely perfect. So make sure when you rewrite it, it's perfect. And the fifth one? Let's see. The fifth one was the use of the apostrophe. You will see that many AIs, and when you put an AI and then an apostrophe S, now come equipped with natural language processing abilities. But I'm sure you know, there shouldn't be an apostrophe because we never ever use an apostrophe when making a plural form. So if you just look at these five, you'll be able to see that we've been asking quite a different number of errors. It's not the same error that will be repeated. In other words, not all five errors will be spelling errors. I'm going to show you exactly how to make sure you know which one is which one. So, which rules are then important? Well, I've got a checklist for you. I've got parts of speech, vocabulary, sentence structure, idioms and proverbs, reported speech, active and passive voice, and of course tenses. So you can use this as a little checklist. So while you're studying, you can tick off to make sure you have studied everything of language. Yes, I know there's a lot more that you can study. But these 7 topics are probably the most important ones. And I'm sure you'll be able to score brilliant marks if you know these 7 things. And this is exactly what we will be focusing on today. So let's start with the easy one. Parts of speech. I'm sure you are most definitely able to name the 8 parts of speech. But please remember, please don't make the mistake and think about figures of speech. No, figures of speech are used in literature and in comprehension. Parts of speech is completely different. Parts of speech focus on the position of a word. So let's look at it. Do you know them? Got a noun, an adjective, a verb, conjunction, preposition, article, interjection, and an adverb. Yes, I know. You've been taught this from grade 1 already. It feels like it. But sometimes it can be a bit tricky. So let's go through the rules one more time. Let's start with the easy one, your nouns. And if you look at your screen, you'll see I have the 4 most important nouns that you have to know. The proper noun, the common noun, the collective noun, and of course the abstract noun. So let's look at the common noun. This is one that you can experience with your 5 senses. So if you can see it, hear it, smell it, touch it, then you know it's a noun. That's always the easiest one to spot in a sentence as well. Your next one is the abstract noun. Now, this one is just the opposite of a common noun. With these things, you are unable to to experience with your five senses. And it's usually emotions. It can be something like friendship, for instance. There you have a bunch of friends standing together. Yes, friendship is a noun. And no, you can't see it, or touch it, or feel it, or smell it. But it is a noun. That leaves us with the pronoun and the collective noun. So the pronoun is also extremely easy to recognize. It is always written with a capital letter. Why? Because it's the name of a person, a place, even a brand. They're easy to spot. That leaves us with a collective noun. So a collective noun is a group of people or animals that are considered as a single unit. And on your screen, you'll see I have a group of crows. Do you know what it's called? A group of crows are called? I'm sure you know the little puppies and all those other ones, but the crows, it's called a murder. So a group of crows are called a murder. I thought it was just cute to remember. Right, so nouns are easy to recognize. So my first suggestion is if you have to recognize or identify the parts of speech, always find the nouns first, as they are the easiest ones. But there are a few exercises you can do to check whether it is a noun or not. If you put a the, a or an in front of a word and it fits, then it's a noun. It's a simple rule, but it works brilliantly. So while we're busy with the, a and the and, let's quickly talk about your articles. So we've got the definite article, and that is a specific example like the boy, the book, the murder of crows, or we have obviously the indefinite article, which is of course unspecified, and there it refers to a and an. And I'm sure you know by now when you should use an. It's when your word following the an starts with a vowel, and that's why you'll use an. So these three are your articles. You already went through two parts of speech. Can you see how easy it is? Because they're all interlinked. Now, there are other determiners just to make you aware of them, so just be careful. So some might express a quantity of a noun. In other words, we have one puppy or three children. So that's also called a determiner. Sometimes it shows what exactly is referred to. For instance, those puppies belong to me. Or that boy is cute. That and those are obviously also determiners. And then we have possessive ones. It is her puppy, or my pet, or my boyfriend for that matter. So it's easy to remember. So you've got articles as well as determiners. They do the same job, basically. Your adjectives is next in row. And I'm sure you know now that an adjective describes a noun. Something that you really have to know and really study is degrees of comparison that adjectives can show. Now, there are 3 degrees of comparison. First one is a positive one, and it only refers to one thing. I am clever. Comparative is when we compare 2 things with each other. I am slimmer than her. I and her is compared. And what we usually do is we add a ER at the end of a word. And remember, not always, because there are some that is a bit strange, but most of the time we'll add an ER. Now your third one is called a superlative. And in this case, we are referring to the best of the best. And we usually put a the in front of it. And that's another clue. So when we do ask you for degrees of comparison, just check whether there is a the in front of that brackets. That immediately tells you, aha, this is superlative. And in this case, we usually put an EST after the word. Weak, weaker, that's your comparative one. Weakest, he is the weakest link. That's easy, isn't it? But there's always a catch, isn't there? Right, so let me show you the catch. If your word has more than 2 syllables, then we can't put an ER or EST at the end of a word. We can't say more beautifuler. It just doesn't sound right. So what are we supposed to do? Oh, it's easy. The moment you recognize that your word has more than 2 syllables, you're going to use more in the comparative degrees of comparison, or you're going to use most and the superlative one. It's as easy as that. That's the rule. So make sure you're able to look very carefully at the word that's given to you. Let me just share something with you. Obviously, we're going to make it a little bit more difficult in the exam, so please be on the lookout for these ones. And that's the adjective. Now, let's look at our pronouns. So, pronouns are words that stand in the place of a noun. And we have 4 of them. So, do I need to know them? I'll come back to that question just now. Let's run through them. I've got personal pronouns. I, we, she, you, they. They stand in the place of a name. I've got possessive ones. Mine, his, theirs, ours. And I've got reflexive ones. Now the reflexive and the possessive ones is almost the same. Myself, yourself, themselves. And I've got demonstrative pronouns like this, that, and those. Sure, that's a lot of information. So let's get back to your question. Do I have to know the different pronouns? You know what? I suggest you do. It's easier to recognize if you know the different parts of pronouns or the different forms of them. But in the exam, if you're not perfectly sure whether it's a possessive pronoun or a reflexive pronoun, leave out that part. Just tell me it's a pronoun. It's as easy as that. So always make sure, if you're not absolutely sure what kind of pronoun it is, even with your noun, if you're not absolutely sure, don't tell us. Just tell me it's a noun or it's a pronoun. Keep it simple. But when you study, make sure you're able to recognize them and know them off by heart. Makes it just easier. So let's move over to your verbs. So a verb is a word that describes an action. That we know, it's action words, or an occurrence or a state of being. It tells us what someone or something does or the condition they are in. I am happy. That's a verb. Now, I'm sure you know verbs. You must be able to recognize and identify a verb in a sentence. That's the easy part. The second part is that you have to know that there are different tenses. And I'm sure I can see you nodding. You know your tenses, don't you? And lastly, I need you to remember the third one, that your subject and your verb must agree with each other. Do you remember when we started with your baseline assessment? and you had to do or identify the errors. One of the errors were subject-verb agreement, where we had has instead of have. So always make sure you look out for those ones. Now your next one is your adverbs. So we have the adjectives that describe the noun, and now we have the adverbs describing the verbs. And in the word adverbs, the word verbs appears. So it is so easy. Now, again, we've got quite a different number of them. And to make it easier, I thought I would use question words to show you how to remember them. So on your screen, you'll see little blocks of question words. How, when, where, how often, how strongly, or how likely. These are all the different kinds of adverbs you get. But again, remember my rule. If you're not quite sure, just name it as an adverb. Because unfortunately, in the exam, if you get it wrong, then I'm sorry, then it's wrong. We always mark the very first word. So if you get it wrong, there's nothing we'll be able to do to help you. So, as you can see, I've got all these little people singing. So let's see how we can look at adverbs using one example. Right. He sings loudly. So loudly describes the way he's singing. The next one is the when. He sings every day. So can you see? That's your time one. Where? It's obviously easy, that's your place. He sings in the shower. Remember, it's describing the verb. Where is he singing? In the shower. That is why it's an adverb. How often? Sometimes he sings. Again, the focus is on the singing. That's your verb. And sometimes describe when he's singing or how often he is singing. They've got another two. How strongly? He sings nervously. Again, describing the way he sings. And the last one, he is definitely singing. In other words, how likely is it going to happen? Now, I'm sure if you remember this, using your little sentence sing, he sings, you'll be able to remember all the adverbs. It's so much easier. How he sings, when he sings, where is he singing, how often is he singing, how strongly is he singing, and how likely is he to sing. And that is adverbs done. Can you see how easy this is actually? Another tip I can give you is that if you want to change a word into an adverb, the only thing you can do is add ly at the end. Look there, loudly, nervously. So sometimes we will give you a sentence and say, change the word in brackets. Make sure if it's not an adverb you're looking at, and you just need to add an ly at the end. Just a small tip to remember. So our next part of speech, and we've done quite a few already, is prepositions. And the preposition gives the position of an object. And I've brought all these chickens with me to show you prepositions. Now, I'm sure immediately there's a lot of chickens that you see, but I want you to focus on certain ones. So you'll see I've numbered a few of them. There's in the first row, there's a little number 1. And the second row, we've got a number 2, a 3, and a 4. And in the last row, we've got a number 5 and 6. So I'm just going to give you a few seconds, and I want you to find the preposition that is shown by our little chicken here. It's easy, isn't it? So let's go through them quickly. So I'm just going to focus on the numbered ones. The first one, yes, he's walking across. Definitely, that could be definitely one of them. He's walking across. The second one, number 2, the chicken is standing next to. And your third one? Now, this is a tricky one. I think we're leaving for last. Number 4. Could you figure out that one? Yes, he's walking through. Now, please remember here that you have to get your spelling absolutely perfect. This one is one of those words that can get easily confused. Through and through. So the one is the one where you throw something, and the other one is like this one where you go through something. So let's check your spelling. T H R O U G H. Well done. Through. You walked through the door. And number 5. So number 5 and 6, I need you to remember. That's really important because these two get often asked. Number 5 is among. When you're standing, for instance, between a lot of friends, you are among friends. That's what we say. You are among the rest of your chicken friends in this case. Whereas number 6 is he is between the two. Can you see he's in between the two boxes? Be careful. So if it's only 2, we say in between, but he is, with number 5, among his friends. Right. So there are obviously a lot of prepositions. I need you to, when you study, find pictures. You can Google it and Google prepositions, and you'll find so many pictures. And make sure you go through all these little pictures and try to recognize exactly what the preposition is. I'm sure you know the other ones: in front, behind, up and down, and underneath, beyond. Let's see which other one I have. So make sure that you have to be able to spell it correctly and obviously use it correctly in a sentence as well. So that's your next one, that's prepositions. Right. Oh, conjunctions. Right, so conjunctions are words that can either join a word or a clause. And to help you to remember the conjunctions, I found the fanboys. I don't know if you are a superhero fan, but maybe this will make it a little bit easier to remember conjunctions. So we have, I think, Spider-Man. For 4, an and, that's Captain America. And then nor, that's a really important one. I'm going to come back to this one a bit later when we're doing conjunction. This is a really important one. I think that's the Green Lantern. I have no idea what our fanboy B is. Maybe somebody will be able to tell us. That's for but. Then we've got Batman for or. Iron Man for yet. And S is, of course, Superman. So it's something small, maybe for you, easier to remember. But so these are all conjunctions. These are all words that we use when we want to join sentences, when we want to join clauses. I need you to make sure that you are able to recognize them. So if I ask you to identify a part of speech in a sentence, this might be one of the things that you have to be able to do. But the second part is we can give you 2 sentences and ask you to combine them together using a specific conjunction. A bit later in the lesson, we'll focus on that. Remember, we're only focusing now quickly on parts of speech just to make sure you know exactly the difference between them. Interjections. These are the easy ones to indicate a speaker's emotion or state of mind. And you always find them in cartoons. Always. Yippee and wow and gee and blah. So these are called interjections. Easy to recognize. Sometimes I think learners struggle. You might struggle to remember the word interjection. So make sure at a point that you know you'll be able to recognize these guys. So it's time for a little activity. You know now your parts of speech. We've gone through all 8 of them. Let's see how well you listened. So what I've done, I'm giving you 2 sentences and I have bolded some of the words. I need you to identify the part of speech in that sentence of the words that are in bold. So while you're thinking, let me just give you another tip very quickly. In the exam, usually we ask more than one. So always make sure, I would suggest that you write down the word like toward and then write down its part of speech. Or and then it's part of speech. Because we will be following the order of the words and that's the way we're going to mark. So if you mix them up, unfortunately, we will not know. We're just going to mark from number 1 to number 3 in this case. So I'm sure you know this one by now. Let's quickly look at it. The robot moved towards the charging station and began processing data quickly. Let's look at it. Yes, you're right. Well done. Preposition is towards. Conjunction is and, we just did them. And your adverb is quickly. How do I know that? Because quickly describes how the robot moved. So when you get something like this, my first thought is always try to find the verb. Find the verb and then see what describes your verb, where's your noun. And it's easy because moved and began processing was obviously our verbs. So quickly means obviously describing our verb that it began processing the data. And data is obviously a noun. Robot is a noun. And there you've got it. Okay, so let's look at number 2. Wow. AI systems are becoming incredibly advanced. This one is a bit more tricky. Let's see. So yes, that's your interjection for wow. That's an easy one. So AI is in capital letters, so immediately you know it's a proper noun. And here we've got advanced. Advanced is describing the system. AI systems, that's your noun. So advanced is describing the systems. And that's why it's an adjective. Now, can I remind you once again, you don't have to tell me it's a proper noun. You could have said a noun and it would have been marked correctly. If you're absolutely sure, then write proper noun. But if you're a little bit hesitant, don't do it. Okay. So, we've done our parts of speech, and now we're moving on to how words are formed. Something that is quite important for you. Now, on the screen, I've got this beautiful pencil, and I've done this specifically with a pencil, so every time you look at your pencil, you will be able to remember the parts of a word. So we've got 3 parts that you need to know. You need a prefix, that's the front part, a root word, and the suffix. Now, the prefix and the suffix is added to a root word to form a new word. So we always have a root word, that's your basis, and then we add prefixes and suffixes to make a new word. And they have on your screen a word, unacceptable. Can you see? Accept is my root word. In other words, that's my basis. And I've added un, and that's your prefix, and able, that's your suffix. So how on earth are you going to remember which one is the prefix and which one is the suffix? Well, it's easy. P before S. Prefix, pre before, S is at the end. And I'm sure if you remember this little picture, you'll remember the pencil. So let me remind you again. Prefix, beginning of a word to make a new word. Now remember, there doesn't always have to be a prefix and a suffix. Sometimes there's only a suffix added to words or only a prefix. You must be able to recognize them. And the suffix is obviously at the end. Now, what are we going to ask you in the exam? Well, there's a number of things we can ask. We can ask you to identify either the prefix, the root word, or the suffix. Or we can go one step further. On your screen, I've made a little table with prefixes that are often used to form words, like re, this, inter, mis, non, pre, sub. Do they sound familiar? Yes, I'm sure it is. Let's do first one. Rewrite. Re then means to write again. Or mistake, something that is taken that's wrong. So you can be asked to explain the meaning of a prefix of a word. So here are only a few of them. It's really easy. The only thing I need you to do first is to find your root word. And then look at your prefix and think, if this part is added to my word, what does it do to the word? How does it change the meaning of my word? Now, just like we can add a prefix, suffixes has the same function. And again, on your table, you will see I've added a few for you. Do you remember the ly? Do you remember where we used it? Yes, of course, in your adverb. And that means to do something. Aha! Can you see how easy that is? Full. If something is an end full, then it means it's full. It's as easy as that. As I say, there are numerous questions they can ask you, but you need to make sure you know what a prefix is, what a root is, and what a suffix is. So if you get this kind of question, always break it down for yourself. Look at the pencil, remember my pencil, and you'll be able to do it. So now that we've worked on words, let's go one step further. On the screen, you will have homonyms and homophones. We love to ask you homonyms and homophones. We will never ask you the definition of these words. We will ask you to give a sentence where you use a homonym or a homophone. So how on earth do you remember all these? Let me show you. So homonyms are the easy ones. Homonyms are spelled the same way, they pronounce the same way, but their meanings are different. Spelled the same, pronounced the same way, meaning is different. Do you want to try this? Let me show you. Take a piece of paper and a pen and write down for me the following sentence. I saw bats. I saw bats. Okay, so just for fun, I'm just going to give you a second or two. Quickly, if you had to put that sentence into a picture, what would you do? So quickly draw a little picture. I saw bats. Have you drawn your little picture? It's easy. I saw bats. It's really easy. Is it? No, it isn't. Because that sentence can mean so many different things. Let me show you. Look at number 1. I saw, these are glasses, I saw bats. In a minute. The bats, flying ones. But you could have also have thought about a bat. Like a cricket bat or a baseball bat. Or, and this is strange, but it could have been that you saw as a saw, where you saw something. So you saw bats, or number 4, you saw bats. Can you see how a misunderstanding can happen so quickly with homonyms? Because we would say something, pronounce it the same way, it's spelled the same way, but the meaning is completely different. Isn't this a cool exercise to do? So tomorrow, during break, ask your friends to do this and then show them the different meanings. One little sentence can have 4 different meanings, and that's a homonym. In other words, spelling is the same, pronunciation is the same, but meaning is completely different. So homophones? It's almost the same. But in this case, it's pronounced the same. You remember when you're on a phone, you pronounce things, it sounds the same. But in this case, the spelling is different and the meaning is different. You know, when you're over a phone and you're speaking and you hear a word, you're not always sure how it should be spelled. This is exactly where the problem comes in with a homophone. Let's think of an example quickly. A bar. We can have a bar of soap. It can be a sandbar. It can even be a bar where you're going to have a drink. So if I say, I want a bar, what do you mean? Do you want a bar, a place? Do you want a bar of soap? Or do you want a sandbar? Let me give you another example. Here's another one for you. Aisle. I'm walking in the aisle. Now, my first picture, as you can see, is a shopping aisle. And can you look at the spelling now here? A-I-S-L-E. But that, the second picture, is also aisle. Difficult, isn't it? It is sometimes. So in the exam, we can give you a word and ask you to give us another homophone and write it in a sentence of your own. Now, be careful with these ones. If you are asked to write something in a sentence of its own, must make sense. And the marker must be able to understand what the meaning of a word is. So your sentence must be clear. Right. Oh, this is easy, isn't it? Synonyms and antonyms. We've been doing them for forever. Unfortunately, they can be quite tricky at times. Let me show you. I've made a little list for you. Okay, so, you are grade 12. So obviously, you're going to level up it a little bit. In the middle, you've got a word. It's called a neutral word. And then we have a synonym on the left-hand side and an antonym on the right-hand side. So I wanted to show you, and this is also extremely helpful when you are writing your transactional writing or your essay, that instead of using normal boring words, try to use a better synonym, for instance. So instead of saying something is artificial, you can say something is synthetic or fake. An antonym will mean it's natural. Let's look at fearful. A synonym will be terrifying or scary or frightful. On the other hand, if you look at my little picture there, courageous or wonderful. So once again, in the exam, we can ask you to provide a synonym or an antonym for a word. I don't have any tricks for you here. The more you read, the easier this will be. And you can do this anytime. while you're reading something, just stop for a second and think, what is a synonym of this word? Or what's an antonym? And if you're not sure, well, you can obviously go to a dictionary. And there's Google. You know Google knows everything. Right. Now the next thing, and you saw this is the one we love using, are words that are often confused. So I want to run through these. There's a whole list of them, but you never know. Maybe one of these will be asked. Do you know the difference between a desert and a dessert? So it's easy when I pronounce it. But in the exam, unfortunately, who's going to pronounce it for you? So you must be able to recognize which one is which one. So if I look at these two words, do you know which one is which one? Which one is the dessert and which one is the desert? Oh, it's actually easy to remember. A dessert has lots of things on it. That's why there's two S's. And desert is dry. There's only one snake, one S. It's something stupid, but it's easy to remember. So there's our desert and our dessert. But as you can see, there's actually a third option as well. If you desert someone, you abandon someone. So this could have been used. Can you see how beautiful these are? That you can use them in a sentence. So make sure that when you read, you know exactly which word we are talking about. Do you want to try the next one? Let's see. Oh, so we've got three ones. Quiet, quite, and quit. Once again, unfortunately, in the exam, I will not be there to pronounce these words for you. So you must be able to recognize them. I'm sure you did, didn't you? Yes, that's easy. Easy one is it quit. I quit my job. I leave. I stop doing something. Quite is it's quite warm outside. I hear actually it's going to be quite cold this week, so please dress warmly. So then quiet is an adjective. She is quiet because she's eating now. Right, so it's small things. As you can see, if I just change the word a little bit and it changes its meaning completely as well as part of speech. And this is why these words are so nice to use when you have to identify error. Let's try the next one. Oh, this is a favorite, isn't it? Absolutely. Do you know the difference? Yes, I'm sure you do. You're grade 12, aren't you? Should know these. So you've got they, and they are. Let's see. So there is a place, there is ownership, and they are with an apostrophe is short, so they are. Look at the middle one. People can't lick their elbows. Did you know that? It's impossible for us to lick your elbow. I'm sure you're going to try now while I'm saying this, isn't it? You're going to try and lick your elbow. But maybe you can remember that this one. So there, elbow, short one. It's in like a little house, and that shows ownership. Maybe these will obviously help you to remember. And there, that last E shows you a place. That's how I remember it. Right. I think I've got one more for you. Do you know the difference between learn and teach? You teach, teacher teaches, and you learn. In other words, you receive the knowledge, which I hope is happening right now. I'm teaching, and I hope you're learning a lot. And then many and much. Oh, this is a tricky one, eh? When do you use many, and when do you use much? Let's see. So many is usually used before a plural noun. So many mice. And remember, nouns is something we can smell, see, touch. So if you have a plural noun, we're going to use many. But if you have a singular noun, we're going to use much, like much cheese. You can't say many cheese. Say much cheese. Right, I hope you've learned something there. So, up to now, we've been focusing on words. Parts of words, parts of speech, vocabulary. Words often confused, but now we have to go a little bit bigger. So when we place these words obviously in sentences, they form sentences. Next to each other, they form sentences. And in the exam, there are 4 things that we usually focus on when we teach or when we assess sentences. Active and passive voice, reported speech, conjunctions, and tenses. So these are the 4 things. So let's start with the first one, which is actually the bottom, tenses. Now, this is really important. On your screen, you will see I've divided it into 3 columns. Got the past tense, present tense, and future tense. That's easy. I'm sure you all know that. But you must be knowledgeable to know the difference between, for instance, the simple tense, the perfect tense, the continuous tense, and the perfect continuous tense. I hope I'm not confused here. So if you see that big line, that's your timeline. Makes things just a little bit easier to explain. So let's start with the present tense. Present tense is always easy. So I study English. Exactly what we're doing now. Every day I study English. That's what we do every day. Straightforward, nothing strange there. But your perfect tense is where I started somewhere and now I've ended somewhere. I've just ended, literally a second ago. I have just studied English. Literally a second ago I finished. Can you see my little arrow? I started somewhere and now I've ended somewhere. Right there. So just before I've just ended it. Whereas if you look at the continuous tense, you'll see we start somewhere and we're going on and we are still busy studying English. I am studying. He is studying English. So if we combine the two, and then we have a perfect continuous tense and it's in the present, we're going to see I'm starting at somewhere and it's still going on all the way. I have been studying English now for 2 hours. See how easy that is? And that's just your present tense. So the past tense works exactly the same. You've got the simple one, I studied. Your perfect tense, I had studied. Again, I started somewhere in the past and I've ended somewhere in the past as well. I've ended. My past continuous tense means I've started somewhere in the past and it's still going on. It's not stopped. I'm still going on. And if I combine them, my perfect tense and my continuous tense means I started somewhere in the past, but it is still going on somewhere in the past. For the past 2 months, I have been studying, or I had been studying, up to yesterday. Can you see we started somewhere and we went up to a certain point in the past. Now, why is this important? Because in the exam, we will ask you to write a sentence and we'll give you a specific tense in which to write it. And this is why you have to learn this. There's no tricks about it. You just have to know it. And the same with a future tense. So you must be able to know exactly what your time words are, how your verb changes. You have to know how to make a negative, and you have to know how to make a question. I know it sounds like a lot, but if you know your tenses, half of your English is done. Okay, so let's try it. It's always good to try things. So let's try this. I'm giving you a sentence. It says, I used Google for my research. Simple sentence. You can immediately recognize this in the past tense. So this is an example question that we can give you. It would say, rewrite the following sentence in the present continuous tense. So I'm very specific as to what I want. I want the present continuous. Okay, so now you have to think on your little scale, where's the present continuous tense? Now you know continuous means it's continuing. So there's an ing that you know. So where do you start? Identify your verb. Our verb is used. My tense that I've used here is past simple tense. Am I right? Okay, so I have to change it from there to the present continuous tense. So present will be using because it's continuous. And obviously I can't say I using. I need to say I am using Google for my research. It's as simple as that. Really easy. But you have to know your tenses. Let's try another one. Now, same sentence. I used Google for my research and I wanted you to use it in the future perfect tense. Okay, so you know future tense is always will or shall. Perfect tense, what have you always been using with a perfect tense? Either has or have. So, did you get it right? Let me show you. I will, there's my future, have used Google for my research by 10 o'clock tomorrow. Easy. And the last one? Well, rewrite the following sentence in the past continuous tense. So now I'm going all the way to the past tense. It's already in past tense. But I need to have the continuous tense. So, what am I using for my past continuous tense? Yes, you're right. I was using Google for my research. Can you see how easy this is? It's really so easy. Okay, let me hold on. I was using. Can't we use were as well? Yes, you can. I were using. Does it sound right? Ha, no, that's the thing. Whenever you have a sentence and whenever you write it, always try to say it softly in your head. Does this sound right? You will pick up immediately if things doesn't sound right. And then you know something is not right. Let's see. I was using Google for my research. Sounds perfect, doesn't it? I were using Google for my research. Sounds perfect as well. So there's your option. Always pronounce it in your head just to make sure you're perfectly right. Can you do this? Yes, you can. It's really easy. But once again, make sure you know your tenses. We're stepping it up. We're leveling it up. Now we're moving over to active and passive voice. Now I know immediately I heard a sigh there that this is not nice. It's actually very easy. Let me show you how it works. And there's a little recipe. If you follow the steps, you'll be able to do them. Again, can you see I'm doing the same thing over and over again? Underline the verb. First thing, find the verb. If you find the verb, it's the easiest thing from there. So here's my sentence. Maya Angelou writes books and poems. Easily. Writes. Okay. Now I need to find the subject and the object of a sentence. I've got the verb. So the subject is obviously the person that is, or the thing that is spoken about. In other words, who writes? Maya Angelou writes. So she is my subject. What is she writing? She's writing books and poems. I really need you in the exam to use different colors or underline or encircle, whichever way works for you, so that you can clearly see this is my object and this is my subject. Because the next step then will be to switch the two. So let's see how this works. Remember, we've got subject, verb, object. in the passive voice, we need to swap them. So Maya Angelou is now going to become the object, and the object is going to move over to the subject. We're literally swapping places. Is it that easy? Yes, it is. The only thing you have to remember is that your verb must agree with your subject. Let me show you what I mean. Books and poems, and now we have a plural. Remember, Maya Angelou is singular. That's why it said writes with an S. But books and poem are plural, which means we can't use writes anymore. And because we're drawing in the passive voice, our verb has a little bit of a different form. And we're not changing the tense. We're just using a different form. Are written by Maya Angelou. Now you're going to tell me how on earth am I going to remember the verb? It's really easy. Let me show you quickly. So again, these are my tenses. I've done again my present tense. Let's look at the present tense. So in this case, when we say she writes books, books are written. So here I'm going to use is or are. If she is writing books, so if I have an ing, I'm going to use being, B-E-I-N-G. There's where my ing is then. Again, I'm going to use is or are and written. And in my perfect tense, she has written books. Now I'm going to use been, B-E-E-N. Books have been written by her. It's as easy as that. Can you see I'm not changing the tense? I'm still exactly where I am. Not changing any tenses. I'm just changing the way the verb looks like. That's the most important thing you need to remember. So again, do you see this little block? You'll have to know it. Learn it off by heart. If I wake you up in the middle of the night and ask you, explain to me, verb change it, that doesn't change with the active and passive, you'll be able to tell me all of this. Okay, that's important. Right, next one, question tags. Sure, we've got a lot. So question tags are usually at the end of a statement. This is to say, is this true? Or do you agree? So how do we usually ask it? Now, usually we will ask you a sentence or give you a sentence and ask to change it using a question tag. Now, the first thing you need to look at, now we're looking at positives and negatives. You know, positive and negative always attracts. Let's look at my sentence. Setting goals is one of the biggest keys to success. Is positive. So now the tag must be negative. Always remember positive and a negative. Here's another example. I could have started with a negative. Setting goals isn't one of the biggest keys. Is it? Negative, positive. Can't have two negatives, can't have two positives. Be careful. Sometimes we leave out the question mark at the end of a tag, and you must be able to put it back in. Remember, you're asking a question here. So make sure there's always a question mark. All right, reported speech. So what happens here is that when we do reported speech, somebody is telling someone what somebody else said. It's like gossiping. Now, here's one. Maya Angelou said that this is one quote that has stuck with me ever since I heard it. We ask you to rewrite it in the reported speech. Where do you start? Step by step. First thing, remove all your punctuation. Inverted commas, exclamation marks, question marks, remove everything, everything. So take your highlight and just draw a little cross around them. Then find your pronouns and change them to he or she or they. So that's now step number 2. And if you look at my little sentences, you'll see what I've done here. I've highlighted all my punctuations and I've changed the me and an I to her and she. Now you'll see this, I've changed it to that as well. That's really important. That little tricks we put in as well. Now, identify your verb. In this case, and only in reported speech, your verb will change to one in the past. Not with active and passive, but with reported speech, your verb will go to one step into the past. So Maya Angelou said this is my verb. Has stuck is another one. I heard it. So make sure that there's not always only one verb. You need to make sure that you've highlighted all of them. So we're going to put them one step in the past. Remember, you are reporting something. In other words, somebody said something, now you're reporting on what has happened. And that's why it changes. So just to remind you quickly. If I have an is or am or are, we're going to change it to was. Remember, we're going from a present tense to the past tense. If I have a has or a have, I'm going to change it to the had. As I say, I'm talking to the experts here, aren't I? I'm just reminding you. So let me show you. That's our original sentence. This is one quote that has stuck with me ever since I heard it. Maya Angelou said, that. Now I know there's two that's next to each other. That's fine because remember we're changing this to that as well. Is changed to was and has stuck become had stuck. With her ever since she had heard it. And I want you to notice I've put a full stop at the end. So important. We literally look for that full stop. And if it's not there, you don't get your mark or your punctuation. So you could have started differently. In other words, you could have started with a quote. That was one quote that has stuck with her ever since she had heard it. But then you must put a comma, said Maya Angelou. Full stop. So these are two options you could have written it in. Okay. I know I'm giving you a lot of information. Remember, if you have any questions, you're always welcome to contact me at 064 748 8913. But we're still busy. We're going now on to conjunctions and combining sentences. Now, I know we spoke about, we are fanboys for our conjunctions, but this is a bit more tricky. When we ask you to combine sentences, we will all give you a specific conjunction. So read the instructions very carefully. Do they want you to start with it? Or didn't they say anything? Then, make sure you don't repeat words. And lastly, make sure you use the correct tense, because there might be a change of tense. And very important, your subject and your verb must agree. And now here comes a big one. When should I use a comma? Let me show you. So here's a list of conjunctions I have for you. After, before, if, since, while, although, as soon as. I wanted to show you. So after we had talks on the phone, comma, I wrote down what we decided. So before we left at 4 o'clock, comma, we had something to eat. So if I'm using after and before, there must be a comma between the two sentences. That's how we combine. There must be a comma. Very, very important. I must be able to see that comma. Now, remember please, when we have after, the first tense that we use is the perfect tense. Had talked. But then I use the simple tense, or also called the indefinite tense. So first the perfect tense, then the simple tense. But before I start with the simple tense, And then I end with a perfect tense. It's something small that you have to remember because we can ask you one of these two. Well, we can ask you anything basically, but one of them as well. Ooh. And then there's the conjunction pairs. We love these ones. And I'm sure you're going to recognize them immediately. We usually give you only one of them. We either give you either, neither, or not only. You have to know that the or and the nor and the but also must also be there. So how do you know which one to do? Let me show you. Neither Peter nor his sisters. Now this is confusing. Am I focusing on Peter or am I focusing on his sisters? Now in this case of either or, neither or, nor, not only but also, look at the noun closest to the verb. In other words, in this case, sisters is the closest to the verb. And because it's sisters, I'm going to use the plural form of a verb, and that is are going. Again, but if I have including, like, or as well as, and in this case, I'm going to look at the first noun. Now you'll see here, same sentence. Peter, as well as his sisters, is going. Why? Because Peter is my noun that I have to look at here. The only way for you is to learn these off by heart. Either or, neither nor, not only, but also. Look at the noun nearer the verb. And then you'll remember all the others are the first noun. Right. Ah, our apostrophe. Love this one. Let me remind you once again. Remember, we use it for contraction and an omission. In other words, we leave out words or letters. We also use it to show it belongs to someone or something. We never ever use it as a plural. Never. We use it as Sam's book or the players' uniforms. Here's a nice quick apostrophe activity. Let's quickly do it. So we've got Garfield. Let's write the contractions out in full. Let's. So Garfield says, let's play, let's play, let's play. So let's is let us. Number B, will, is of course we will. And I'm is of course I am. But look at number 2. Rewrite the sentences and use the apostrophe. Garfield is John's cat. Can you see between the N and the S in John's, we have to put an apostrophe to show possession. They are inseparable. If we combine the two, remember we did it earlier, they, apostrophe, R-E. And then there's another one, middle sentence. That's a fact. That, apostrophe, S. So even just looking at your cartoons, you will be able to do language. Can you see how easy this is? So let's end where we started. Remember, I asked you to start by identifying errors. Let me remind you again. There's only one error. You need to correct it, and you need to write down the answer. So what do we usually put in there that you need to correct? Now, I'm sure I'm not allowed to tell you this, but I am going to. Be on the lookout for spelling, apostrophe, concord, remember our verb and subject, words confused, prepositions, and tensions. These are the ones we love asking. So if you know what to look out for, it's much easier. So we've got a few minutes left. Are you ready to test your knowledge? Let's try this. So remember, in your question 5, there's going to be 2 texts. One will be a reading text and one will be a picture of something. The language questions will be based on these ones. Now, here's your first one. Correct the single error in the following sentences. I'm literally going to give you 10 seconds. See if you can quickly find it. Did you get there? I'm sure you did. It's so easy. So the first one says, it's the perfect occasion to enjoy the South African sunshine. We've got Simba teamed up with Chef Benny to create brand new flavor in chips. He wanted to capture the essence of the braai, and Chef Benny believes Simba's steakhouse beef flavor is perfect for a braai. Remember what I said to you? So let's quickly look at that. Here's your answers. Tick if you're correct. So the first one is the apostrophe. You can see there, it is should have had an apostrophe. Number B was a tricky one. Simba teamed up with Chef Benny to create a brand new flavor. So we used the incorrect preposition here, of chips. He wanted to cover the S's, that's a spelling error. And Chef Benny believed, no we can't, we have to have believes because he was single. Do you see that? Concord. So here's your tag question, for instance. Complete the following tag question. Write down only the missing words. It is a perfect filler for a braai. Remember what I said? Find your verb. Is it positive or negative? In this case, it's positive. So our tag has to be negative. And isn't it? Make sure I'm able to see that apostrophe there. I'm sure you're doing brilliantly here. Well done. Rewrite the sentence. Okay, so this was a strange question we got last year in the November question paper. That's why I've added it here. It doesn't tell you what's wrong with it. He describes taste as a smoky flavor with sweet barbecue notes. The thing you had to do here is you had to read it in your mind. And the moment you read it, you'll notice that there's a word that's not right there. And the word was is the has. Should change to has. He described his taste as a smoky beef flavor. So if you do find something like this, where it's not quite clear what you need to do, try to pronounce it in your mind and see what doesn't work. Right, here's another one, reported speech. Now I want to give you a tip quickly. Look at the mark allocation. This one counts 3 marks. It gives you a good idea. I need to change at least 2-3 things. Let's quickly look at this one. Chef Benny said that they, there's not a pronoun we need to change here, roped. Remember, we have to go one step into the past. Had roped me, we can't use me, him, and that's it. The rest was easy. Please note, I have my little full stop at the end. No inverted commas, no commas anywhere, left out everything else. Here's my homophone. So this is how it's often asked. Study the following sentence. He often meets people that tell him they enjoy the new flavor. Use a homophone for the word new in a sentence of your own. Now you know new, homophone. Can you remember? Different spelling, different meaning. So obviously my word has to look differently. Did you get it right? He knew he was in trouble. There's my little boy. He's in trouble. And you're in trouble if you didn't get this right. Just a joke. But can you see how I have to do it? And I have to do it in a sentence of my own. And the sentence must make sense. And there's the homophone I've used. Passive voice? Let's try this. Simba has created a delicious braai companion. Can you remember where you started? Where's the verb? Where's my subject? Where's my object? And then we're going to switch them. A delicious braai companion has created, has been created. Can you see how easy this is? By Simba. Remember to add the by Simba. Don't forget about that. Right. Oh, here's a lot of parts of speech for you here. Now remember in the exam, we probably will only ask you 2 of them. But I included a number of them. She added that the brand presents a flavor that bridges the gap between starters and brine. Now this is a good exercise for you to do. Take any sentence and try to identify all the parts of speech. You are able to do that? Then you know you can do this. So there they are. Now can you see what I've done here? I've just said noun, verb. Remember what I said to you. You're not quite sure. Don't qualify it. Negatives. So again, this is how the question will read. Rewrite the following sentence in a negative form. Now once again, where did we start? Yes, we started with your verb because that's the most important one. So let's just check the first one. The new steakhouse stands out. That's your present simple tense. And I'm going to use doesn't or does not stand. Remember, I can't have the new steakhouse beef does not stand. You can immediately hear it doesn't work. And that's why I say to you, try to hear it to hear if it's working or not. He wanted to capture. Now, wanted is your past simple tense. Now, in this case, I'm going to use didn't or did not, and I need to use want. Did not want it? Can you immediately hear it doesn't work? So that's the best way to do it. And South Africans enjoy a braai. South Africans don't or do not enjoy a braai. Remember, something very important. If it says rewrite the following sentence in a negative form, you have to rewrite the sentence. In other words, you have to start where it starts and rewrite the whole sentence. Sometimes we will ask you to only give us a word. But if we say rewrite, you have to make sure you rewrite the whole sentence. Otherwise, we're not going to mark it. Combination one. So it says combine the following sentence into a single sentence by using the words as well. So it didn't tell us where the as well should be. Google is the most visited website. Google is the most popular search engine. So we have 2 options here. We could have said Google is the most visited website as well as the most popular search engine. Remember, I'm not going to repeat Google again. All I can say, Google is the most popular search engine as well as the most visited website. It's really very, very easy. In this case, look at this one. Combine the following sentence into a single sentence by using not only. Now, it's the same sentence. I'm just changing the conjunction for you. Now, immediately you would recognize not only, I need to add, but also. Let's see. Not only is Google the most visited website, comma, but also the most popular search engine. Or I could have said, not only is Google the most visited website, but also the most popular search engine. Or I could have said, Google is not only, can you see, there's a lot of options available to you. Now always remember, in the marking guideline, we will add all the different options for you. You just have to make sure that you add the but also. Really important. Now, something we haven't touched on a lot is idioms. And they might ask you an idiom or a proverb in the exam. So, I'm going to give you a sec. Can you identify the idiom and its meaning if you look at these little pictures? It's actually so easy, isn't it? I'm sure you'll be able to recognize some of them. Some of them are quite difficult. You really have to think out of the box for this one. Did you get it? I especially like The little cloud that is drinking a green juice. Could you get that one? Or this little child that is sitting with the blocks and a block of fire. And I think this is a cucumber. It's not a pickle. I first thought when I saw it was a pickle, but it's a cucumber. Let me show you. This is just for fun. So let's start with the first one. The paper is cutting corners. Literally cutting corners. You are as cool as a cucumber. You are playing with fire. Let your mind wander. And then my little cloud one, food for thought. Isn't that brilliantly done? Food for thought. Now, obviously, next time we won't ask you these. These are just fun. But yeah, it's always good to remember a few idioms because they might ask you them. Now, you remember a few Mondays ago, you actually had homework on our cartoon with Calvin and then about the bugs where he was giving his speech, just like you probably have completed your speeches just now. I've got a little bit of homework for you. So there's the questions if you want to take quickly a screenshot of them. So I'm going to ask you to rewrite it in reported speech. I have a little added tag for me, a contraction that you have to complete, a synonym that you have to give, and a piece of voice. So this is for homework, so maybe next time when I see you, we can run through these questions quickly. So this for exercise for your homework. Right, just to remind you what we've done for today, parts of speech, you have to know that. Of your words, remember the difference between your prefix, your root, and your suffix. Remember my little pencil? Tenses, active and passive, remember you don't change the tense. Reported speech is where you do change the tense, and conjunctions. Make sure it makes sense. Right. So next week's lesson, let me quickly tell you about that. Now, the next English lesson will take place on the 9th of June. And this is when I will be back and I will be able to see you again from 2:30 to 4 o'clock. And we will be revising paper 1. And this is really important. Why? Because you will be writing paper 1, provincial paper, the next day. So I do suggest you log in, make sure I can see you at 2:30 on the 9th of June, and we'll be going through a revision of paper 1 to get you ready for the next day's paper. And with that, I want to wish you all the very best. It was fun doing this with you. Well done, good luck, study hard, and know you can do this.